joined by Emma Zang. She's actually an assistant professor of sociology at Yale University. Easy for me to say, Emma, but thank you very much for being here. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk a bit about this, because I think if you would talk to the average person outside of Asia, you're talking about a country with 1.4 billion people, you would not really focus on the fact that marriage rates are falling as well as birth rates.
Yeah, so it's actually the marriage rate has been falling now for the first time. It has been kept falling in the past several years. There are actually a couple of reasons for this. The first one is the increased cost of getting married among young people. So, for example, the average cost of getting married was 230,000 RMB in 2020, which was almost 4 times the cost 5 years ago. And this doesn't even include the cost of purchasing a family home yet. So housing price has been increasing for a long time in China as well, making it really hard for young people to afford marriage. However, culturally, a family home is still considered a necessity for marriage. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, we have the increasing economic power and independence of women. As women are getting higher education, they're becoming more independent, both economically and culturally. They don't need to depend on men to provide for the family anymore. So the opportunity cost of them getting married and having children also gets higher. In the context of rising divorce rate and unequal gender norms, a lot of Chinese women would rather spend time improving themselves and advancing their own career than investing in a marriage. So I would say that this is not surprising.
Yeah, Emma, you've detailed those reasons very clearly, but I guess some people would say, what's the problem behind falling rates? Because so many people in the country, and you deal with how many nations have more, how many cities have more than 20 million people in each one? What are the concerns?
Yeah, the concern is that marriage and birth are typically bundled together in China. So declines in marriage are linked to declines in birth rates. And low birth rate itself is not necessarily a problem, but it becomes a very serious problem in the context of population aging. Population aging is one of the biggest social and policy issues in China nowadays. So simply speaking, low birth rates mean that we don't have enough young people in the labor force to support a large number of older adults in the future anymore. So I would say the issue is more about its implications in terms of population aging and low fertility.
Well, Emma, China, if nothing else, has been very efficient when its government puts its mind to doing something. Trends have been reversed. What can China do to reverse this trend? Because that obviously appears to be the goal right now.
Yeah, I would say that it's very, very difficult to encourage marriage and fertility because essentially it's individual choices. But there are things that policymakers can do to support marriages. So first of all, policymakers could make some policies to promote more gender egalitarian social environment. This includes encouraging men to contribute more to housework and childcare. Also, it's important to create a more gender equal labor force, reduce the wage and promotion penalty of working mothers. It's also important to have more generous leave policies and reasonable work hours. Think about it. If young people are working in a 996 working hour system, they will barely have time to date and have a relationship. Again, I would also like to emphasize that encouraging marriage and fertility is really, really difficult in practice from a policy perspective, considering the current global trend. So policies trying to increase fertility haven't been very successful at all in other countries. Yeah. So rather than encouraging marriages, policymakers could also consider simply reducing the current barriers of having children. Yep. So for example, social norms and government regulations makes it very challenging for unmarried people to have children right now in China. Sure. By reforming marriage laws, it would be possible to allow them to make their own contributions to fertility rates.
Emma, we don't have a lot of time, but I've been to China several times and I've seen those large bouquets greet the bride-to-be at the engagement. Real quickly, talk about the difference between what's going on inside big cities like Beijing, Shenzhen, and Shanghai, as opposed to more rural areas.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say the decreasing marriage rate disproportionately happen more in big cities, as women in big cities, they tend to be highly educated and they have more sense of independence. In rural areas, as women still face limitations to access higher education, marriage is still relatively universal to them. However, as the mass scale of rural to urban migration is happening, so I think the decreasing marriage trends will soon spread to the rural area as well.